A policeman is driving past a roadside apple stand when he notices the sign, "Apple seeds guaranteed to make you smarter, $20 per seed." He pulls over and informs the vendor that it is fraud and false advertising to make absurd claims like this. "No, no, no," the vendor tells the cop. "My apples are a special variety. A scientific miracle. Buy just one seed, eat it, and you will notice an increase in intelligence. If not, I promise to refund your $20. "All right," says the cop. "But if this doesn't work, I'm shutting your operation down." He hands over a $20 bill, takes the seed, chews it up, and waits for it to kick in. After a few moments, he says, "You know, even if you're not lying, I could have bought a whole bag of your apples and had enough seeds to last me months." "Ah, yes," says the vendor. "It's working already." A drunk stumbles along a baptismal service on Sunday afternoon, down by the river. He proceeds to walk down into the water and stand next to the preacher. The minister turns and notices the old drunk and says, "Mister, are you ready to find Jesus?" The drunk looks back and says, "Yes, preacher, I sure am." The minister then dunks the fellow under the water and pulls him right back up. "Have you found Jesus?" the preacher asked. "No, I didn't," said the drunk. The preacher then dunks him under for quite a bit longer, brings him up and says, "Now, brother, have you found Jesus?" "No, I did not, Reverend." The preacher, in disgust, holds the man under for at least 30 seconds, brings him out of the water and says in a harsh tone, "My good man, have you found Jesus yet?" The old drunk wipes his eyes and asks the preacher, "Are you sure this is where he fell in?" In church on Sunday morning, the preacher was standing up at the pulpit preaching a sermon. After speaking for about 10 minutes, he said, "If I had all the beer in the world, I'd throw it in the river." Then he talked some more, and a little while later he said, "If I had all the wine in the world, I'd throw it in the river." After that statement, he kept ranting and raving until about 15 minutes later when he said, "If I had all the whiskey in the world, I'd throw it in the river." Then he talked for a few more minutes and sat down. Then the choir director stood up, and with a sheepish smile on her face, she said, "Now will the congregation please stand and join us in singing hymn number 134, Let's All Gather at the River." There was an old man who lived by a forest. As he grew older and older, he started losing his hair until one day on his deathbed, he was completely bald. That day, he called his children to a meeting. He said, "Look at my hair. It used to be so magnificent, but it's completely gone now. My hair can't be saved. But look outside at the forest. It's such a lovely forest with so many trees. But sooner or later they'll all be cut down, and this forest will look as bald as my hair. What I want you to do," the man continued, "is every time a tree is cut down or dies, plant a new one in my memory. Tell your descendants to do the same. It shall be our family's duty to keep this forest strong." And so they did. Each time the forest lost a tree, the children replanted one, and so did their children and their children after them. And for centuries, the forest remained as lush and pretty as it once was, all because of one man and his receding airline. Brad's first year away at university was a lot of partying and paying for his friends. He quickly runs out of money. His father would not be pleased with his wastefulness, so Brad sends him a message stating he has a professor that can teach his father's dog how to read and write for a bargain price. The father can't believe the advances the school has made, but also can't pass up the opportunity. Brad soon receives his dog and the money, but promptly burns through it again. This time his father is sent another message that another professor of Brad's can teach the dog to talk to people for more money. Brad again receives the money. Soon the father is bragging to everyone in town about how when Brad comes home with the dog can not only read and write, but can also converse with everyone. Word spreads, and at the end of the school year, a huge throng of people are waiting to see the dog arrive at the train station. However, neither Brad nor the dog is to be seen. The father looks off at the caboose and sees a slumped-shouldered Brad slowly get off the train. The father runs to greet his son and asks where the dog is. Between whimpers, Brad tells him that while they were riding the train back home, the dog put down the newspaper he was reading and said, "Brad, I'm so glad I can speak because now I want to tell your mother what I saw your father and the housekeeper doing when she wasn't around." Brad told his father, "I got so angry. I grabbed that dog by the neck and threw it off the train. We must have been going 100. There's no way it could have survived." Brad's father grasped him by the shoulders and looked directly into his eyes before saying, "Son, are you sure that lying dog is dead?" An old man approaches the window of a cinema with a chicken on his shoulder and asks for 2 tickets. The girl at the counter wants to know who is going in with him. He replies, "Well, my pet chicken, of course." "I'm sorry," the girl tells him. "We can't allow animals in the cinema." The man goes around the corner and stuffs the chicken into his trousers. He returns to the window, buys his ticket, and goes in. Inside the cinema, the chicken starts to get hot and begins to squirm. So the man unzips his trousers so that the chicken can stick its head out and watch the film. Seated next to him is a woman. She looks over at his lap and is horrified. She elbows her friend Agnes and whispers, "Agnes, this man over here has just unzipped his trousers." Agnes whispers back, "Oh, don't worry about it. You've seen one, you've seen them all." Madge says, "I know, but this one is eating my popcorn." Einstein was once traveling from Princeton on a train when the conductor came down the aisle, punching the tickets of every passenger. When he came to Einstein, Einstein reached in his vest pocket. He couldn't find his ticket, so he reached in his trouser pockets. It wasn't there, so he looked in his briefcase but couldn't find it. Then he looked in the seat beside him. He still couldn't find it. The conductor said, "Dr. Einstein, I know who you are. We all know who you are. I'm sure you bought a ticket. Don't worry about it." Einstein nodded appreciatively. The conductor continued down the aisle punching tickets. As he was ready to move to the next car, he turned around and saw the great physicist down on his hands and knees, looking under his seat for his ticket. The conductor rushed back and said, Dr. Einstein, don't worry. I know who you are. No problem. You don't need a ticket. I'm sure you bought one." Einstein looked at him and said, "Young man, I too know who I am. What I don't know is where I'm going." An accordion player is getting sleepy at the wheel of his '93 Geo Metro hatchback on his way home from playing at a bar mitzvah. His accordion lies on the passenger seat next to him. The accordion player decides to pull over at a small pub with a sign reading $1 beer night. He takes some change out of his car's cup holder, enough for a couple $1 beers. Inside, he stacks his change on the bar, mostly nickels and pennies, and pretends not to notice the bartender's eye rolling as a glass of beer is set before him. He nurses his beer for a while, depressed, staring blankly at his reflection in the mirror behind the bar, wondering where everything went awry in his life. Suddenly he leaps to his feet at the horrifying realization that he forgot to lock his car. The memory of what happened the last time he left his car unlocked surges to the forefront of his thoughts. He bolts out of the pub and runs to his car. He quickly glances into his car's front seat and sees exactly what he hoped not to see. There are 2 more accordions lying next to his. In Jerusalem, a female journalist heard about a very old Jewish man who had been going to the Wailing Wall to pray twice a day for a long, long time, so she went to check it out. She went to the Wailing Wall, and there he was. She watched him pray, and after about 45 minutes, when he turned to leave, she approached him for an interview. "Sir, how long have you been coming to the wall and praying?" "For about 60 years. 60 years! That's amazing! What do you pray for? I pray for peace. I pray for all the hatred to stop, and I pray for all our children to grow up in safety and friendship. How do you feel after doing this for 60 years? Like I'm talking to a wall. An old couple is celebrating 75 years of marriage. At the party, one of the grandkids asks the grandma what the secret is to such a long, happy marriage, as they never seem to argue or disagree about anything. The grandma tells them a story of when they first got married. It was our wedding day, and we were very poor, so we were heading to our honeymoon on our donkey and cart. We were about an hour into the journey when the donkey just lay down and wouldn't budge. My new husband said to the donkey, "That's one." After a few minutes, the donkey got up and started going again. After another little while, the donkey again sat down and wouldn't move, and my husband said, "That's two." Again, eventually, the donkey got up, and we were on our way. Then eventually, the donkey stopped and wouldn't go any further, and without a word, my husband got down and shot the donkey and said, "That's three." I was so shocked, I started screaming at my husband, "What did you do that for? Are you crazy? That's terrible." My husband turned to me and he said, "That's one." A man walks into a diner during a terrible blizzard, but only has enough money to order a cup of coffee. He hasn't eaten anything all day and is terribly hungry. Down the bar, he sees another man leaning over a steaming bowl of chili, but the man isn't eating his chili, just looking at it. Stomach rumbling, he calls out to his neighbor, "Are you planning on eating that?" The other man shakes his head, saying, "I've lost my appetite." The first man says, "Well, would you mind if I took that?" "Not at all, be my guest," he replies, sliding the bowl carefully to the first man. Eager to fill his belly, he unabashedly digs into the warm bowl of chili. As he gets to the bottom of the bowl, he discovers a hairy, scabby Band-Aid at the bottom of the bowl of chili. Disgusted, he throws up everything he just ate back into the bowl. The second man comments, "Yep, that's about as far as I got into it, too." A retired older couple returns to a Mercedes dealership where the salesman has just sold the car they were interested in to a beautiful, leggy, busty blonde in a mini skirt and a halter top. The old man was visibly upset. He spoke to the salesman sharply. "Young man, I thought you said you would hold that car till we raised the $55,000 asking price," said the older man. "Yet I just heard you close the deal for $45,000 with the lovely young lady there. And if I remember right, you had insisted there was no way you could discount this model." The salesman took a deep breath, cleared his throat, and reached for a large glass of water. "Well, what can I tell you? She had the cash ready, didn't need any financing help, and, sir, just look at her. How could I resist?" replied the grinning salesman sheepishly. Just then, the young woman approached the senior couple and gave the car keys to the old man. "There you go," she said. "I told you I could get that idiot to lower the price. See you later, Dad. Happy Father's Day." A Viking sailed across Europe challenging people to staring contests. He was so confident in his abilities that he promised to hand over all of the gold he had pillaged to anyone who could defeat him. The news spread throughout Europe, catching the attention of a couple in Ireland whose daughter was born without eyelids. Believing that their daughter was guaranteed to win in a staring contest, the couple sent a messenger to invite the Viking to Ireland to face off against her. He gladly accepted the challenge, setting sail the next day. The Viking eventually arrived at the couple's home, where he and the daughter had a staring contest that lasted for hours and eventually days. Nearly a week had passed, and the Viking's eyes remained wide open. At this point, the girl was so exhausted that she decided to forfeit the match, losing by default. Her parents were baffled. The wife asked her husband, how could he have kept his eyes open for so long, even against someone with no eyelids? With no good explanation, the husband shrugged and responded, "You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him blink." An older gentleman orders 3 shots, one for him and one for each of his brothers back home in Ireland. He explains to the bartender, "I had to move to America to help my wife care for her in-laws, and I miss my family back home. So I'm having a shot here for my brother Seamus and another for my brother Michael." He downs the 3 shots, makes a little more small talk with the bartender, and heads home. For a few weeks he makes this an almost nightly tribute. But about a month after the man started, the bartender notices that it's been a little longer than usual since he's seen his regular customer. Finally, though, he's relieved to see the man come in, albeit looking depressed. "3 shots?" asks the barman. With a sigh, the customer responds, "Just 2 from now on." "Oh no," says the bartender. "I'm so sorry. Is it Seamus or Michael?" "It's not that," the man says. "I've just decided to quit drinking." After a sneaky moment together, the brother-in-law said to his sister-in-law, "I have to admit, you're even more exciting than your sister." The sister-in-law looked down sadly and replied, "That's funny, because my husband always says your wife is more exciting than me." A man goes to a golf course and tells the club pro he's taught a gorilla to play golf. The club pro is understandably skeptical until he glances outside and sees a gorilla holding a golf club. "The way he drives the ball," the man says, mimicking a huge swing. "Just amazing." "I'll believe it when I see it," the pro replies. The man tells the pro, "I'll bet you $50 right now he can beat you." After giving this some thought, the pro decides he could use an easy $50. They shake hands on it, and the 3 of them head out to the first hole together. The pro tees up first. He winds up and drives the ball almost 300 yards down the fairway. He grins briefly as the man sets a tee and ball for the gorilla. The gorilla approaches the ball and swings, launching a missile right down the center of the fairway, over 400 yards. The ball lands on the green 5 yards from the hole. Flabbergasted, the pro is speechless. As they walk down the fairway together, the man says to the pro, "Look, bud, I don't want to waste your time or cause any embarrassment in front of anyone else out here, you know? You want to just slip me the $50 and we'll call it good?" Seeing a painful and shameful loss in his immediate future, the pro reluctantly agrees and forks over the money. As they're leaving, the pro says, "Hey, just since I'm curious, how's his putting?" "Oh," the man says, mimicking a huge swing, "just amazing." Milk. The only cow in a small town in Ireland stopped giving milk. The townfolk found they could buy a cow in Scotland quite cheaply. They brought the cow from Scotland. It was wonderful. It produced lots of milk every day, and everyone was happy. They bought a bull to mate with the cow to get more cows, so they'd never have to worry about their milk supply again. They put the bull in the pasture with the cow, but whenever the bull tried to mount the cow would move away. No matter what approach the bull tried, the cow would move away from the bull, and he was never able to do the deed. The people were very upset and decided to go to the vet, who was very wise, tell him what was happening and ask his advice. "Whenever the bull tries to mount our cow, she moves away. If he approaches from the back, she moves forward. When he approaches her from the front, she backs off. If he attempts from the one side, she walks away to the other side." The vet rubbed his chin thoughtfully and pondered this before asking, "Did you, by chance, buy this cow in Scotland?" The people were dumbfounded, since no one had ever mentioned that they had brought the cow over from Scotland. "You are truly a wise vet," they said. "How did you know we got the cow from Scotland?" The vet replied with a distant look in his eye, "My wife is from Scotland." A little Catholic boy and a little Protestant girl, both about 4 years old, were growing up in Northern Ireland. Even though Catholics and Protestants didn't generally get along with one another, the two played together often, not understanding why their families said they shouldn't be friends. On one particularly hot day, the two were playing when the little girl said, "'Tis terribly hot today. We should go take a dip in the swimming hole." The little boy replied,
"We cannot do that. We do not have our swimming clothes."
but the little girl said,
"That's all right. We can go swimming in our all-togethers."
So the two went off to the swimming hole where they each got undressed. At which point the little girl starts to look at the little boy, head to toe, eyes wide and confused. And the little boy was looking at the little girl, head to toe, jaw wide open with a puzzled look on his face. He then managed to say, "Ma Da told me that Catholics and Protestants were different, but I did not think we were that different." An American visiting Ireland walks into a bar. He says, "I've heard you Irish can drink. We'll see. Here's $500 that says no one here can drink 12 pints of Guinness, one after another and without a break." He looks around the bar, and there are no takers. In fact, one guy shrugs and walks out of the bar. The American is slowly drinking a pint of Guinness. Nearly an hour has gone by, and he's just about to leave the bar when the Irishman, that had left earlier, taps him on the shoulder. "The name's Murphy. Is the bet still on?" The American says, "Sure it is." The barman lines up the 12 pints, and sure enough, Murphy drinks one after another until they're all gone. The American says, "That was quite a thing." He pays the barman for the drinks and hands the $500 to Murphy. Just as Murphy goes to take the money, the American grabs his arm and says, "Hey, why didn't you take me up on my bet when I first came in?" Murphy puts the $500 in his wallet. Murphy said, "I cheated. I walked out to the pub across the road, ordered 12 pints, and then drank them to check out if I could do it first." A guy is sitting quietly reading his Sunday newspaper one day when his wife suddenly hits him over the head with a frying pan. "What was that for?" he shouts. His wife says, "I was just doing the laundry and I found a piece of paper in your trouser pocket with the name Mary Lou on it. Who the hell is she?" The guy says, "Oh, don't worry about that, dear. Do you remember when I went to the horse racing with my friends the other week? Mary Lou was the name of the horse I was backing." Satisfied, his wife returns to the laundry, but a few minutes later she comes running back into the room and hits her husband over the head with the frying pan again. "What was that for?" he shouts. His wife says, "Your horse just called." 3 nurses, sadly, pass away. They rise up into heaven, and there they approach the gatekeeper to plead their case for entering paradise. So the keeper points to the first nurse who says, "I worked in an emergency room. I treated many people and always did my best to help. And although sometimes we would lose patients, I still think I deserve to enter." The gatekeeper glances at her file and admits her to heaven. The second nurse then says, "I used to work in the operating room assisting surgeons. It was a lot of stress and we lost many people, but I always did my best." The keeper glances at her file and motions her to enter. "And you?" he asks the third nurse. "I was a case manager for an HMO. I worked with thousands of patients," she answers confidently. The gatekeeper takes a long and careful look at her file. He pulls out a calculator and starts entering digits quickly, looking back from time to time at the woman's file. After a few minutes like this, the keeper looks up, smiles at her, and says, "Congratulations, you've been admitted to heaven for 5 days." A woman brought a very limp duck to a veterinary surgeon. As she laid her pet on the table, the vet pulled out his stethoscope and listened to the bird's chest. After a moment or two, the vet shook his head sadly and said, "I'm sorry, your duck Cuddles has passed away." The distressed woman wailed, "Are you sure?" "Yes, I am sure. Your duck is dead," replied the vet. "How can you be so sure?" she protested. "I mean, you haven't done any testing on him or anything. He might just be in a coma or something." The vet sighed, turned around, and left the room. He returned a few minutes later with an old dog. As the duck's owner looked on in amazement, the dog stood on his hind legs, put his front paws on the examination table, and sniffed the duck from top to bottom. He then looked up at the vet with sad eyes and shook his head. The vet patted the dog on the head and took it out of the room. A few minutes later, he returned with a cat. The cat jumped on the table and also delicately sniffed the bird from head to foot. The cat sat back on its haunches, shook its head, meowed softly, and strolled out of the room. The vet looked at the woman and said, "I'm sorry, but as I said, this is most definitely 100% certifiably a dead duck." He turned to his computer terminal, hit a few keys, and produced a bill, which he handed to the woman. The duck's owner, still in shock, took the bill. "$150?" she cried. "$150 just to tell me my duck is dead?" The vet shrugged. "I'm sorry. If you'd just taken my word for it, the bill would have been $20, but with the lab report and the CAT scan, it's now $150. A cop stops a car for traveling faster than the posted speed limit. Since he's in a good mood that day, he decides he might give the fellow a break and write him out a warning instead of a ticket. So he asks the man his name. "Fred," the driver replies. "Fred what?" the officer asks. "Just Fred," the man responds. When the officer presses him for a last name, the man tells him that he used to have a last name but lost it. The officer thinks he has a mental case on his hands, but he has a long shift ahead, and he's bored, so he goes along with it. "Tell me, Fred, how did you lose your last name?" The man replies, "It's a long story, so stay with me. I was born Fred Dingaling. I know, funny last name. The kids used to tease me all the time. So I stayed to myself. I studied hard and got good grades. When I got older, I realized that I wanted to be a doctor. I went through college medical school, internship, residency, finally got my degree, so I was Fred Dingaling, MD. After a while, I got bored being a doctor, so I decided to go back to school. Dentistry was my dream. Got all the way through school, got my degree, so I was now Fred Dingaling, MD, DDS. Got bored doing dentistry, so I started fooling around with my assistant. She gave me VD. So, I was Fred Dingaling, MD, DDS, with VD. Well, the ADA found out about the VD, so they took away my DDS, so I was Fred Dingaling, MD, with VD. Then the AMA found out about the ADA taking away my DDS because of the VD, so they took away my MD, leaving me as Fred Dingaling with VD. Then the VD took away my Dingaling. So now, I'm just Fred. The officer walked away in tears, laughing. A man goes to the doctor with a long history of migraine headaches. When the doctor goes over his history and does his physical, he discovers that the poor guy has tried practically every therapy known to man for his migraines and still sees no improvement. "Listen," says the doc, "I have migraines too, and the advice I'm going to give you isn't really anything I learned in medical school. But it's advice that I've gotten from my own experience. When I have a migraine, I go home, get in a nice hot bathtub, and soak for a while. Then I have my wife sponge me off with the hottest water I can stand, especially around the forehead. This helps a little. Then I get out of the tub, take her into the bedroom, and even if my head is killing me, I force myself to have sex with her. Almost always, the headache is immediately gone. Now give it a try, and come back and see me in 6 weeks." 6 weeks later, the patient returns with a big grin. "Doc, I took our advice and it works. It really works. I've had migraines for 17 years and this is the first time anyone has ever helped me." "Well," says the physician, "I'm glad I could help. By the way, Doc," the patient adds, "you have a really nice house." Rabbi Bernstein was in a terrible accident, and his manhood was mangled and torn from his body. His doctor assured him that modern medicine could give him back his manhood, but that his insurance wouldn't cover the procedure since it was considered cosmetic surgery. The doctor said that the cost would be $3,500 for a small, $6,500 for a medium, and $14,000 for a large. Rabbi Bernstein was sure that his wife and he would want at the least a medium, and perhaps even a large. But the doctor urged him to talk it over with his wife before he made any decision. The rabbi called his wife on the phone and explained their options. The doctor came back into the room and found the rabbi slouched over in the chair, looking quite dejected. "Well, what have the two of you decided?" asked the doctor. "She'd rather remodel the kitchen."